Today on the show, we have Natasha Phipps, who is the founder of her real estate brokerage, Phipps Real Estate Group, based in Calgary, Alberta. Natasha is a longtime member and speaker of both REIN and Keyspire, two well-known investment groups here in North America. Natasha and her team focus on helping their clients build wealth through strong real estate investments, and today she will be sharing with us what's going on in the Calgary real estate market, updating us on her latest business ventures, and where she sees areas of opportunity. Natasha, thanks for joining us here today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. One clarification, it's not my own brokerage, but I am the team leader. We're with CIR Realty here in Calgary, and they're Alberta's largest real estate brokerage. So we're an independent company here.
Awesome. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
The real estate market has seen many changes here in the last year, but it seems to be a little bit differently operating in Calgary. What's been happening in the Calgary market over the last year?
Yeah, it's been exciting here on the ground. You know, the last almost a decade, we've been kind of used to being the riskier sort of market. And what's really, really exciting in the last few years is I feel like we're doing a good job of actually seeking diversification. And we're seeing that in industries across the board, which I'm hopeful, and I think many people are hopeful, that will bring about a lot more risk mitigation in terms of just how the energy sector impacts our economy. Obviously, that's not going anywhere, but that's been the largest development is just this confidence around diversification. And that's impacted the real estate market really well. And I think we were well insulated in terms of what the interest rates have done to the Canadian market here in the last year, for a few reasons. One was our market was already kind of depressed. We weren't sitting at a high position like a lot of the other major Canadian cities. So we'd already seen that price correction. Plus, at times of kind of affordability crisis, high interest rates, inflation, Canadians are seeking affordability, and that's driving them to Alberta and to Calgary, where I am. So I think that's where a lot of that activity is certainly coming from.
And I know just being involved in these real estate groups, and when you're speaking with, BC-based investors or Ontario-based investors, Alberta is much more on the radar than it has in the past. And I'm sure you're seeing much more inquiries from people coming over from these provinces. What are sort of some of the driving forces behind the Calgary market and why investors would be coming over?
Yeah. The last couple of years, I've started to joke that Ontario is going to own Alberta soon because there's just droves of investors coming here for years now. It's kind of becoming more mainstream knowledge now, I would say, in the last year. But really, since 2019, I mean, we have been doing more transactions with out-of-town investors than with local investors. And so they're all seeking similar things. They are looking for something that cash flows or at least breaks even. And in their own marketplace, that's also a challenge. So those two things are what usually get investors looking outside their own backyard first.
Yeah, definitely. And being, attendees and members of those different real estate groups, REIN, Keyspire, the talk is definitely around Alberta and those cash flowing properties. So can definitely attest to that. Looking at Calgary's downtown core over the last few years definitely took a bit of a hit, some higher vacancy rates, and as well as, just less desire to be in the city. What's the Calgary downtown core looking like today?
Yeah. So from 2015 to 2019, pretty well the downtown core condominium sector was the hardest hit by far in terms of what we went through here in Alberta. And that was a result of oversupply, but also just Calgarians, there wasn't as much opportunity downtown. You didn't need to be downtown anymore. And so businesses were even pushing out to the suburbs into these kind of like low-rise business commercial spaces for affordability. So our downtown hit the hardest in terms of vacancy and sliding property values. So for those years, it was every single month, red on our monthly real estate reports. So it was good to see as we started getting into the pandemic, things were starting to balance out. And now we've been seeing positive growth slowly. Nothing's happening overnight, but it is happening. And that extra vacancy is absolutely getting eaten up now. And we don't have any issues renting downtown now. And the office space is also getting chewed up now with a lot of new business interest in Calgary as well. So it's really turned right around.
So it sounds like sort of that supply glut over, almost half a decade is sort of getting pushed through now and sort of out the other end. We've heard of office building conversions into condos. Has that been a common thing? Is that something you see much in the marketplace of?
There's been a lot of different ideas in terms of office conversions. We even have like a vertical farm downtown. There is really cool things happening, and that's purely because of oversupply. Now, converting office space to more condominiums when the condominium market was struggling at times didn't make a lot of sense to me. But now that we're seeing that vacancy come down, the demand there again, it is starting to make sense. But the condo market is sort of it's still just turning that corner, I would say. We're not seeing nearly the appreciation downtown yet, like we've seen in the suburbs in the last 2 years. So the excitement around Calgary kind of started in the suburbs, and it's slowly approaching the downtown because prices are getting too high, interest rates are getting too high. So those more high density properties become more desirable again.
And with the Bank of Canada not raising rates there in March, are you seeing a bit more increase in buyer confidence?
Yeah, I mean, we held pretty good confidence over the last year because of the interest rates, because people couldn't afford to live elsewhere. So many people working from home now, there was a lot of relocations happening purely because people could buy here and they couldn't buy elsewhere because interest rates were so high. So confidence has remained good in terms of home buyers and people relocating here. The rental market has been absolutely crazy as well. But confidence has been good. Investors have been a little bit more hesitant, right? Like it's harder to make the numbers work. They're not seeing nearly the cash flow they saw out of opportunities we were sending out 3-4 years ago. And now they're kind of kicking themselves. But certainly, as we approach the spring market, you can feel that confidence growing even more now, since the rates are kind of where they're at now, and now it's a matter of okay, let's kind of make a decision and see what we want to do here. And I think people feel there's still excellent room for growth here in the Calgary market, so they do want to get in despite rates.
And you've definitely carved out a name for yourself in the real estate investment space, becoming a go-to resource and an expert in the Calgary market. Speaking with a lot of investors across Canada, when I say if they're interested in Calgary, you got to talk to Natasha, or already heard of her, or I'm already talking to her. And so hats off to you in that. I know you've put a lot of work on that part of your business, and definitely very numbers driven as well. And so walk us through sort of maybe a recent opportunity that you sat down with an investor client, sort of purchase price, expected rents. Maybe walk us through kind of high level what a property would look like, maybe cash to close, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so for out-of-town investors, they're usually seeking a couple of things. The most common thing they're looking for, though, is something that has more than one unit in it. So a suited property of some kind, an up-down duplex or fourplex, these work. Suited properties, there is a wide range. A lot of people from out of town like new or new-ish, right? So they're buying those suited properties in the $600 to $650 range that are a few years old, completely legalized, ready to go. And we're seeing gross rents on those now, like in the high 3,000s. So rents consistently are going up month over month. So with a 20% down payment on that, you're in that, $120,000 to kind of close. And those are really easy to own from anywhere. The rental demand is excellent. We manage them for them in-house. We do full-time property management as well, purely just to take care of our clients. It's not necessarily our bread and butter or anything, but it's important that these things work after. So those are very, very common. The other thing that people, if they are wanting a bit of work, what is super popular here right now, still, we've been talking about this for years, is suite conversions. So picking up a, single family house in that, 500-ish range, putting a secondary suite in it for that 80,000 kind of range. And afterwards you have a property worth, six in the mid kind of sixes. So that's a really popular strategy too. The city of Calgary is very much on board with suite legalizations or adding suites. So adding that density to communities that don't have it is another way that real estate investors are kind of taking advantage of that residential rental market opportunity.
And with those suites there, is Calgary for Airbnbs? Is that something that you would help your clients with? Is that short-term rentals for those suites?
So those ones are long-term rentals. Short-term rentals are something we've started to get excited about in the last year. For quite a few years, I didn't have the confidence in it. In the last year though, because of the influx of people for all reasons, the short-term rental demand is really good. The city of Calgary has no restrictions aside from needing a business license, which is completely reasonable. So they work very well on these suited properties, whether you Airbnb them both or just the suites. And then we have a list of about 5 or 6 condo buildings. There's not many of them that we know we're extremely confident are friendly to short-term rentals. So for our clients who say want to purchase something under 300,000, like 250 to 280, you can get a cash flowing short-term rental now here in Calgary in these buildings that have super high demand, great inner city locations. And then we have the whole team to kind of take care of everything for you there as well to make you completely hands off.
That's cool to know. I'm sure a lot of BC and Ontario-based investors are drooling to hear about an Airbnb-able condo for under 300 grand. So phone might be ringing.
We got that search going every day. And there's other buildings that people are doing it in, but like the biggest risk with condominiums is just the rules could change, right? So we keep it really tight and specific with the buildings that we recommend. If people go elsewhere, that's fine, but this is where we know we've kind of done our homework. Yeah, and you can get these one bedrooms, sometimes even in the mid 2s, and then 2 beds, you're kind of 3 to 350 downtown. So good opportunity there.
And I know you're always looking for ways to not only expand your investors' portfolios, but also looking for ways to grow your wealth as an investor. I know you're very active yourself, and part of your growth and your passion project that you've been working on for quite some time has been the Wealthshare REIT. Talk to us about how this came about and give us an update on where things are at today.
Yeah, that's been a really fun project. Started about a year ago. Like anything, it starts with that one kind of unicorn property that you find that starts getting the wheels in motion. But as an investor here in Calgary, I've kind of been waiting for that opportunity to jump into multifamily that made sense. And for years, anyone coming to me inquiring about multifamily, I would kind of steer them away, like purely because of vacancy and the rents weren't making sense. And if the numbers don't make sense, then I can't recommend it. And as that was changed over the last few years, I've been watching it very closely. And so about a year ago, a 2-year-old building came up under court-ordered sale in Mission, Southwest Inner City, Calgary, like exactly the area you want to be, high income tenants with a high ratio of renters. Close to downtown, and this building is kind of what kind of spurred it all. So I took that and then went to investors, see what would they be looking for, and learned very quickly, as you guys know, they wanted to use registered funds. Not everyone is accredited, which limits these kind of private offerings for them very quickly. And so we wanted to offer that solution. And in talking to investors all the time, they want to get into multifamily, but it's hard to do it on your own. Like it's such a big jump to go from owning a few residential properties to owning a building. And so this offers a passive opportunity for them to diversify in the Calgary market and in the multifamily space. So we ended up launching a mutual fund trust, which is a form of a private REIT here in Canada, and are building our multifamily portfolio with that. So starting here in Alberta in our own backyard.
Exciting.
Awesome. That's very exciting. Yeah, good for you. That's huge. And with multifamily in Calgary, we touched on it a little bit with single family homes is the rents. Have you been seeing the rental growth in these multifamily buildings similar to BC and Ontario, or are you expecting also some appreciation in these buildings just naturally?
First of all, a huge thing about Alberta is you can raise your rents once per year as much as the market will bear. And in multifamily commercial real estate investing, we all know that the net operating income is what's going to determine the value of your property, right? And given that you can turn that around pretty quickly here, given the lack of kind of rent controls, means that you can do a nice burr here just by proper management, right? Just by righting the ship that might be not going quite right. You don't necessarily need to go do substantial renovations. And so that is a major benefit to multifamily here in Alberta. We can raise that rent once per year as much as we like. And there is so much opportunity here in Calgary. Kind of as I mentioned, these inner city locations were the hardest hit, and there's tired landlords who they're just not taking advantage of where the market is. Like, it's astounding when you look at these rents. And where investors get caught up, though, is they look at Natasha, these rents suck. I'm like, I know they suck, but that's the opportunity, right? That's what the opportunity is the rents are super low. But you have to have that vision for what you can do with the financing. And that's the name of the game in multifamily real estate, as you both know. So that's bringing about some really interesting opportunities on the multifamily side. We're not a huge city, though, as well. Like, it's not like there's hundreds of deals to be had at any given time. So preparation and organization, being ready to execute, is a big thing too here.
One of the things that we experience here in Vancouver is sort of the landlockness of, the border, the agricultural land, the ocean, the mountains, all that stuff. Whereas Calgary has, room to sprawl and expand. And as every time I go back near the airport, it seems like it just gets northerner and northerner. And so do you think that there is room of areas of opportunity outside of sort of the metro core, or do you believe because of the abundance of land that can sort of hinder the price appreciation in some of those secondary cities outside of the Calgary kind of metro?
That is a very good point about Calgary, and some, I think, needs to be remembered. It is a very good point as to why we don't appreciate the same way that you would in Vancouver. Like, you're just not going to see that here because of that. Now, we have room to appreciate, of course, but the sprawl is something that's being combated. Like, it's nice to see the city on board with, they are increasing density and zoning possibilities here in Calgary to start going up. Because even if we can sprawl forever, that doesn't mean people want that. So that's really important to know. For multifamily specifically, though, as soon as you leave inner city, you are not going to find a lot in the suburban market in terms of multifamily. So you end up in the residential space if you kind of want that suburban sort of tenant, which has some good benefits. But you made a good point about the surrounding communities. These kind of smaller surrounding towns and cities around Calgary are bringing about some interesting opportunity. And as rents go up, as property values go up, people who want affordability but still, maybe work in Calgary will commute. So we have seen some really good opportunities come up in Cochrane for, multifamily and residential opportunities. So I would seek outside of Calgary as well, especially if you're looking for those good kind of multifamily or even the residential opportunities, because your price point will go a little bit further.
With Calgary expanding so much, has the infrastructure kept up? I know there's the Stony Trail Ring Road that they're putting in out Springbank. Is that kind of keeping up with the growth of the city?
Oh gosh, I cannot. So that's like right outside my house.
Okay.
That link is just about happening. I mean, we've been talking about this what feels like my entire lifetime here, and I'm sure it's close. But that is a big deal. We need that completed. So that is set to be completed in the following year or so, and it will connect the kind of northwest to the southwest. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's not a direct route. In terms of infrastructure, where we are behind, and we have been for a long time, is in the schools. So sometimes new families coming to Calgary are struggling a little bit in terms of the distance they have to, commute for their kids to schools, especially in those newer suburban communities. Like, just because there's a land set aside for a school does not mean it will be there in the coming years. It could take 10 years. It could take 5. We don't know until that funding comes through. Another big infrastructure change that has been on the table for a long time that is finally starting is the new the new train line called the Green Line. And public transportation is a big thing that people talk about with Calgary. It's not quite as accessible as, say, Toronto. So that new line that will kind of connect north to south directly is massive. So it's good to see that approved, funded, and actually shovels in the ground. So those are the kind of two major things that are happening. And then Ring Road, we kind of talked about that. So yeah.
Any talks of the C train making it up to the airport? I remember being at University of Calgary. That was my mode of transportation, getting downtown on the weekends.
Yeah, it's been talked about for a very long time. the line that goes up to the northeast right now, they have 2 stops in the City Calgary plan to extend into like basically into those areas that you see when you fly over northeast Calgary there, but nothing approved or in the plan to connect that to the airport. But eventually it has to happen, I would hope. But not yet.
And bringing it back a little bit, you obviously got into real estate some way or another. Maybe tell us about your very first real estate investment and how it led you to where you are now.
Yeah, I was very lucky when I kind of got my first property. So I grew up outside of Calgary. My parents have never lived in the city, very much like acreage type people. But my mom was a personal banker at Scotiabank. My dad's self-employed in the construction industry, still is today, has a pretty large company that does exterior finishing. But of course, me turning 18, I was not going to be wanting to live out in Springbank anymore. So wanted to move into the city. And I remember my mom actually like sitting down at the table and talking about a mortgage and how I could go pay someone's rent or pay down my own mortgage. And we literally looked at the numbers over the course of 10 years and what that would look like for me. And I was lucky enough that they actually helped me buy my first property. And it was a pre-construction house in Citadel in Northwest Calgary. Went through the whole like construction process of it, built it, sold it shortly after. Why was I living in the suburbs of Calgary? I was trying to be, but wanting to be an investor, but I also wanted to be downtown. So that didn't work out. So I lived there for like 6 months and sold it. But when I sold it, I think I walked away with like 20 grand. I don't know. It wasn't a lot of money. To me, it was a huge amount of money. I was like astounded that I went through this and it was kind of fun. And I lived in this house for a bit and I made some money. So I used that money then to buy my first condo downtown. And that was on my own. And because then I had a little bit of money and then I could buy something for very cheap with very little, and then started buying and selling and kind of flipping these condos at the time. And it was pretty hard not to make money during that time. So I got the bug pretty quick.
Very, very cool story. And it sounds like a snowball effect, one into the other, and then the snowballs down the mountain there. So very cool story on how you got started. It's impressive the real estate business that you and your team are building there in Calgary, and as well as the passion project there with the Wealthshare REIN and helping eligible investors, people for with RSPs and TFSAs sort of get working in real estate. And so it's always great to hear what's going on with our neighbors out in Alberta. And thanks a lot for sharing everything with us here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks, Natasha. Great speaking with you today.
Awesome. Thank you.